He was 2 years old, wearing a Superman costume and looking for a hero. But when Maddox Derkosh slipped from his mother's arms, he didn't fall into a safety net. He bounced off it, directly into the jaws of 11 of Africa's most efficient killers. They didn't bark. They chirped like birds as they began the evisceration. This is the story of the day the Pittsburgh Zoo became a house of horrors. The air in Pittsburgh on November 4, 2012 was crisp, the kind of late autumn morning that brings families out for one last stroll before the bite of winter sets in. At the Pittsburgh Zoo and PPG Aquarium, the atmosphere was festive. It was a zoo school day, an educational event designed to bring children closer to the wonders of the natural world. Among the crowd was 2-year-old Maddox derkosh. He was a small boy with a big spirit, dressed in a Superman costume left over from Halloween just days before. Because Maddox struggled with vision problems and wore thick glasses, his mother, Elizabeth, was determined to make sure he didn't miss a single detail of the magic. They eventually reached the Painted Dog Bush Camp. It was designed to look like a rustic research station in the African savannah. To the average visitor, the African painted dog looks like a colorful, scrawny version of a domestic pet. They have large, rounded ears, mottled coats of brown, black, and white, and a seemingly playful energy. But those who study them know the truth. These are not dogs. They are Lycaon pictus, painted wolf. They are the most successful endurance hunters on the planet, boasting a kill rate of nearly 90%, far higher than any lion or leopard. They don't kill with a single snap to the jugular. They are attrition hunters. They chase their prey until it collapses from exhaustion, and then they begin to eat it while it is still alive. Elizabeth Derkosh wanted her son to see these rare creatures. She lifted him up to the 4-foot-high wooden railing of the observation deck. The deck was elevated 14 feet above the enclosure, providing a bird's-eye view of the pack of 11 dogs. Below the railing, a cantilevered safety net was stretched out. To a parent, it looked like a life-saving device. In reality, it was a catch-all net designed to snag dropped cell phones, sunglasses, and cameras. It was never engineered to hold the weight of a human. As Elizabeth held Maddox, the 2-year-old, perhaps excited by the movement below or reaching out for a better look, lurched forward. In a heartbeat, the unthinkable happened. He slipped from his mother's grasp. Witnesses would later describe the sickening physics of the next 3 seconds. Maddox fell 14 feet, but he didn't land in the enclosure immediately. He hit the safety net. Because the net was pulled tight and made of a non-absorbent material, it didn't cradle him. It acted like a trampoline. Maddox bounced. He bounced once, then twice, his small body propelled by the tension of the mesh, until he tumbled over the edge of the secondary barrier and landed directly on the floor of the predator pit. He landed on his feet inside. He was conscious. He was alert. He was a 2-year-old boy in a Superman costume, standing alone in the middle of 11 apex predators. For a few seconds, there was a stunned silence from the crowd above. Then, the sounds began. African painted dogs don't growl or roar when they hunt. They communicate through a series of high-pitched chirps, twitters, and who calls. To the uninitiated, it sounds like a melodious symphony of birds. To the dogs, it is the signal that the hunt has begun. The pack didn't hesitate. Their predatory instinct was triggered the moment the prey hit the ground. Elizabeth Derkosh screamed, a sound that witnesses said could be heard from across the zoo. She attempted to vault over the railing to save her son, but she was physically restrained by another visitor, who knew that if she jumped, she would only be the second victim. She was forced to watch from 14 feet above as the pack converged on her only child. The attack was clinical and devastatingly fast. The dogs utilized their natural feeding mechanism, evisceration. They began to tear at Maddox from all sides, pulling in opposite directions. The medical examiner would later find that Maddox sustained over 220 separate injuries. 46 of those wounds were to his head and neck alone. He didn't die from the fall. He died from blood loss, exsanguination, as the dogs systematically dismantled his body while he was still conscious. The response from the zoo was a chaotic failure. Zookeepers arrived within minutes, but they were powerless. They were carrying dummy tranquilizer darts and blanks, intended to spook the animals rather than sedate them. Even if they had used live tranquilizers, the drugs take minutes to work. Maddox only had seconds. Staff members resorted to throwing shovels, rakes, and sticks at the dogs in a desperate, futile attempt to drive them back. 7 of the dogs were eventually lured into their indoor crates, but the remaining 4 were in such a state of predatory arousal that they refused to leave the boy. When Pittsburgh police officers arrived on the observation deck, they saw a scene of pure carnage. One dog remained particularly aggressive, standing over Maddox's remains and refusing to retreat. The officers opened fire, killing the animal instantly. By the time the zoo president, Barbara Baker arrived on the scene. She made the grim determination that a rescue was no longer possible. It was clear the child was dead, and entering the enclosure would only put more lives at risk. The recovery of what was left of Maddox Derkosh was a slow, agonizing process. In the wake of the tragedy, a dark cloud of litigation and public anger settled over Pittsburgh. The zoo's legal defense was aggressive and, to many, heartless. They argued that Elizabeth Derkosh was solely to blame for the death of her son, claiming she was reckless to lift him onto the railing in the first place. But as the lawsuit progressed, a more disturbing truth emerged. The zoo had been warned. Internal records revealed that for over 6 years, the zoo's own safety committee and staff had flagged this exact exhibit as a death trap. As early as 2006, reports noted that visitors were dangling children over the open railing. In 2007, a docent explicitly recommended installing plexiglass to seal the opening, warning that someone would eventually fall. An employee named Lou Neen testified that he saw parents lifting children to that railing at least 10 times a day and had warned his supervisors, only to be told to go back to work. Despite these 6 separate warnings, the zoo did nothing. They relied on the fact that they had passed 35 USDA inspections that focused on animal welfare rather than the predictable stupidity or accidents of human visitors. The case never went to trial. In 2014, the Derkosh family and the zoo reached a confidential settlement. The African painted dog exhibit was closed forever, replaced by cheetahs, a species far less aggressive toward humans. The 10 remaining dogs were shipped away to other facilities, and the observation deck was torn down. But the story didn't end in the courtroom. In the depths of their grief, Jason and Elizabeth Derkosh found a way to honor the boy who loved superheroes. They started a foundation called Trucks for Maddox, because Maddox loved toy construction trucks. They asked the community to donate them to children in need. The response was overwhelming. Over 20,000 trucks were collected, and the foundation has since funded hundreds of pairs of glasses for children with vision problems. The very same struggle that led Maddox to that, railing on his final morning. Today, the painted dog bush camp is gone, but the memory of the chirping in the pit remains a haunting reminder of the thin, fragile line between a family outing and a biological slaughter. Maddox Derkosh couldn't fly like the hero on his costume, but in the end, his legacy became a different kind of strength, a reminder that while nature is indifferent to our tragedies, our capacity to heal is what makes us human.